I'm going to show you a chess game that was played by Bobby Fischer against Efim. Bobby Fischer, who was playing from the white pieces, opens the game with pawn to e4, pawn to e5, knight to f3, knight to c6 and bishop to b5. White goes for the Ruy Lopez, pawn to a6, bishop to a4 and now black goes for pawn to d6. I have already covered the opening trap which arises after pawn to d4. I will just show this opening trap in a minute. After pawn to d4, black would go for pawn to b5, bishop to b3, knight captures d4, knight captures d4, e captures d4, queen captures d4 and after pawn to c5 and queen to d5, black would not go for pawn to c4 because of queen takes a8, but first he would go for bishop to e6, attacking this queen, queen c6 check, bishop to d7 and after queen to d5, black would then go for pawn to c4, but unfortunately this did not occur in the game. After this pawn to d6 move, white simply castles kingside, bishop to g4 and pawn to h3. Attacking this bishop, bishop to h5 and white immediately goes for pawn to c3, threatening pawn to d4. And black has an interesting idea here. He goes for queen to f6 and the idea is if you go for a move like pawn to a3, then after bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, queen takes f3 and g takes f3, this would certainly give black a good advantage in the endgame because his pawn structure is definitely better than white's. So in this position, after queen f6, white plays pawn to g4 attacking this bishop, bishop to g6 and now pawn to d4. Sacrificing this e4 pawn, black accepts, bishop captures c4, knight b d2 and now black goes for bishop to g6 which was not a good move. If black went for bishop to f3 then it would have been a good move but even here white retains a slight advantage. How? After black would go for pawn to e4 then white would go for rook to e1 and after pawn to d5, knight g5, queenside castle but now bishop captures c6, b captures c6, queen to b3, king to b7, pawn to c4 would most certainly give white a good advantage. But this unfortunately once again did not occur in the game. After knight bd2, black went for bishop to g6 and now bishop captures c6, b captures c6, d captures c5 and d captures c5. Knight captures c5 and this is the idea my friends. Black's king side is pretty much shattered. If black goes for queen to capture c5 then after rook to e1 it would win the queen. So in this position after knight captures c5, black tried bishop to d6, knight captures g6, queen captures g6 and now rook to e1 giving another check. If black goes for knight to e7 then do you see the idea? White would immediately go for knight to e4 and after castles, knight captures d6, c captures d6, rook captures c7 would give white a material advantage and a winning advantage as well. So obviously after rook to e1, black tries king to f8 and this is not a bad move for black. In fact, this is the best move and after this king to f8 move, black is trying queen f6, g6 and king g7. So white must really act fast. Knight to c4 putting pressure on this bishop, pawn to h5 threatening h captures g4, knight captures d6, c captures d6 and here white goes for bishop to f4. And this is not a bad position for black as well. It's a slight advantage for white. He could have gone for rook to d8 and the game would have continued after pawn to g5 and pawn to h4. But in this position, Efim makes a blunder with pawn to d5 and in this position try to take advantage of this pawn to d5 blunder. After pawn to d5, white immediately goes for queen to b3 and if black goes for h captures g4 then queen a3 would give a check, knight to e7, queen captures c7 and after king to g8 white would go for pawn to h4 and this would certainly give white a winning advantage because he's up a bishop. So after this queen to b3 move, black tried h captures g4, queen b7 was played instead of queen a3 check but this wins as well. After queen b7, g takes h3, bishop to g3. Now there are simply no more checks. Black tries rook to d8 and after queen to b4, it was in this position that Efim resigned the game. Why did he resign the game? Well, no, there is simply no way for black to stop this check. If black goes for rook to d6, then white would go for queen captures d6, queen captures d6, bishop captures d6, knight to e7 and after rook captures e7, white has two rooks and one bishop. Black only has one rook and this would certainly be a winning position for white. But after this, queen to b4 move, black could have at least tried knight to e7. But even here, after queen captures e7, king to g8, and queen captures d8, black has a losing position. Thank you for watching the video till the end, friends. I will be visiting you with more chess videos on opening chess traps, puzzles, endgame strategies very soon. So subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any of my future content. Thank you and have a great day, friends.